and welcome back to Law and Crime Trial Network. I'm Stacey Delicat. Thanks so much for sticking with us this afternoon as we continue to follow the McStay family murder case out of California. I have trial attorney and former prosecutor Imran Ansari with me here live in studio, who will be breaking down all of today's developments with me. But first, we want to get you back live into that courtroom right now where Detective Dan Hankey is still on the stand. He's from the San Bernardino Sheriff's Office. We've been listening to the testimony of Detective Dan Hankey from the San Bernardino Sheriff's Office, who was among those to investigate the computer records of Joseph McStay, specifically these QuickBook records, this QuickBook account, or accounts rather, that were created in his names from which checks were written. There have been a lot of dates thrown around, a lot of numbers, but the bottom line is right before and right after Joseph McStay was last heard from, a number of checks were written to Charles Merritt. Some of them were deleted, some of them were cached, but they were written from a second account that McStay was not known to use. So clearly something fishy is going on here. My guest live in studio this afternoon is Imran Ansari. He's a trial attorney, also a former prosecutor. So what are we to make just of the significance? I mean, we're hearing a lot of minutia here, dates, amounts. It can get confusing, but what do you think is the overall significance? What are prosecutors trying to tell the jury by walking them through this step by step by step?
Well, it's really critical testimony that the jury is receiving now for the prosecution. They're getting a lot of information. You heard testimony today about the computer forensics. Now you're going through the financial forensics. But why it's important, Stacey, is because the motive which the prosecutors are putting forth, why they are saying Charles Merritt murdered this family, was a financial motive. So all these transactions back and forth that the prosecution is trying to tag on Merritt, it's extremely important forensic information for the jury. Right,
because presumably, this is money that he wrote out to himself, right before or right after the family went missing. Now, in terms of this pattern of creating checks, deleting checks, some of them are cashed, some are not. We were chatting about this briefly during the testimony, but if Charles Merritt did in fact do this, is the idea that he thought he was deleting a record of this, I'm wondering, or, what do you think, what do you make of the deletion of all of these checks? He just didn't realize it would be tracked? Or whoever did it,
Right. Stacey, I think it's another question mark that we've been seeing in this trial. The prosecution has a certain amount of evidence in this trial that they have to work with. It's less than ideal evidence, in my opinion, in terms of proving their case against Charles Merritt. The deletions, it's a question mark. Was he making, was he on that account? Was he writing checks to himself? And then in his mind, perhaps a naive understanding of what would be happening in QuickBooks. Was he deleting it? Perhaps. But, again, it's another question mark, and the prosecution is going to have to sort through this evidence and really make their case.
Yeah, we're going to take a quick break, actually, Imran. When we come back, we're going to hear a little bit more from Detective Hankey, who's still on the stand, but there's lots more to talk about regarding this QuickBook account, the checks, the evidence, all of that, so stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, well, as you saw, just as we were going back, the judge was calling a recess, the testimony of Detective Hankey wrapping up there. So they're going to be taking a short break, about 15 minutes. As soon as court resumes, we will bring you back that live signal. In the meantime, let's step away from the McStay family murders for a moment and check out today's True Crime Update.
This is today's True Crime Update from Law and Crime. InfoWars conspiracy theorist Alex Jones will have to submit to a sworn deposition as part of the defamation lawsuit filed against him by families of Sandy Hook victims. The ruling from Judge Barbara Bellis allows for Jones and 3 other defendants involved with the business operations of InfoWars to be deposed. Jones repeatedly has promoted conspiracy theories on his radio and internet shows that the Sandy Hook shooting was a hoax and that families of victims are so-called crisis actors. The lawsuit claims that Jones doesn't believe the theories, but is using them to build an audience and make money through advertising and products he sold on his website. Empire star Jussie Smollett is speaking out about his assault in Chicago. In an interview with Good Morning America, Smollett describes racial slurs invoking President Trump's campaign slogan hurled at him immediately before he was attacked.
And I see the attacker masked, and he said, "This MAGA country punches me right in the face."
Chicago police have released a surveillance picture of 2 persons of interest in the case, but so far, no arrests have been made. The wife of ex-Chicago cop Jason Van Dyke says that her husband was assaulted by inmates in his cell in federal prison. We are all petrified and in fear for Jason's life, his wife Tiffany told the Chicago Sun-Times. Van Dyke was recently transferred to the federal prison in Danbury, Connecticut, from a local jail in Illinois. Van Dyke was sentenced to 6 years for second-degree murder and aggravated assault in connection with the death of unarmed teen Laquan McDonald. The Illinois Attorney General has appealed the sentence, claiming the judge misapplied the law and gave Van Dyke too lenient of a sentence. This is today's True Crime Update. I'm Jesse Weber for the Law and Crime Network.
Well, the Jason Van Dyke trial is certainly one that we watched very closely here. People all around the world watched it closely, as it was a real benchmark case in Chicago in terms of law enforcement being held accountable for shooting an unarmed young black teenager. And I'm just wondering, Imran, I mean, I imagine it's quite common that inmates get assaulted. I mean, that's what we see in movies. That's what we see in TV shows. In a case like this, I mean, the family says they're scared for his life. I mean, what rights does he have as a prisoner?
Right. Well, if his life is in jeopardy, if he is in real danger of being assaulted, and, after this trial really polarized the community in Illinois, and as you said, it got coverage across the country, across the world. So, he's entering into a facility. Jail is not a pretty place. It's not a fun place to be. So he could very well be in danger, and, his attorney could make a request to have him, accommodated. And there is a degree of responsibility of a facility, of a penitentiary, to make sure that an inmate, his or her safety is taken care of.
Does that mean putting him in solitary then for his own protection?
You know what? Sometimes, solitary as a punitive measure in incarceration is one thing, but solitary is sometimes also ordered for an inmate when they are in danger, and Van Dyke may be in danger.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely keep an eye on that one as things develop. I mean, it was not just the killing and the trial, but really the verdict that polarized the nation and really upset a lot of people, of course. Just sentenced to 6 years in this case when he could have faced many, many more. Well, let's move on to another story making news today. R. Kelly, right? We all have heard about the allegations against him, this really blockbuster TV series that aired featuring a number of women who claimed they were held basically as prisoners by him in their home. Underage girls who claimed they were sexually assaulted, really part of this cult-like environment that Kelly created. Well, today, who's getting involved but Michael Avenatti, right? The lawyer who went after Trump representing Stormy Daniels. He claims he has new evidence, videotape evidence that shows that R. Kelly had sex with an underage girl. Check out this update.
The R&B singer, who has long denied claims he slept with underage women while settling their lawsuits against him out of court, may soon be in deeper trouble with the law. Attorney Michael Avenatti claims to have a tape showing R&B superstar R. Kelly having sex with an underage girl. Also, The New Yorker is reporting that an indictment is pending and R. Kelly could soon be arrested. That report cites unnamed law enforcement sources in Chicago. The author of the report has reported on R. Kelly for 17 years. Avenatti says he's representing a whistleblower who claims to have worked for R. Kelly for decades. The whistleblower contacted Avenatti, and Avenatti turned over the alleged sex tape he provided to prosecutors in Chicago. CNN says it viewed the tape, which is 45 minutes long, and calls it clear and explicit. CNN could not independently verify the girl's age, but in the video, the girl refers to herself as 14. R. Kelly was arrested for child pornography in 2002, but was acquitted in 2008. He has spent millions settling civil suits from women claiming he had sex with them while they were underage, while himself denying he did anything wrong.
Wow, lots to talk about with this one. So first of all, Imran, would a videotape, if, and CNN has apparently seen this videotape, so they say it does exist, but is a clear videotape of R. Kelly having sex with a girl, though we can't verify the age, Avenatti says that there's proof, is that enough for an indictment?
Well, prosecutors will have to follow up and investigate that videotape, meaning they're going to reach out or try to identify who that girl is. They're going to speak to the witnesses, such as the source of this videotape, and they're going to have to find enough evidence to present it to a grand jury for an indictment. Now, if there's a clear shot that this is R. Kelly, and then they verify that this girl is in fact 14, that's going to be problematic for R. Kelly. And we know, this isn't his first tango with the law. He's been at it, quite a few times, and, we're going to have to wait and see.
Right. I mean, we don't know what's going on inside the Cook County State Attorney's Office, but I remember about a month or so ago, she held a news conference and said, we're asking more people to come forward, anyone who may have been a victim. It seems like they were really grasping. They're trying to build a case, but so far, perhaps didn't have enough. So maybe this will be the key piece of evidence. Now, my other question is, wow, Avenatti, where does he come from on this, right? Is it just, any high-profile case, suddenly he attaches his name? And do you think it helps or hurts the case at all to have him attached? I mean, if anything, I guess it gives it even more attention, the fact that Avenatti's the one who brought this to law enforcement.
Right. Well, it's going to get press as it is because it's R. Kelly, right? But you put Avenatti in the mix, it's going to get even more press, I think, because he's a sort of hot name right now. Whether you have a favorable or negative opinion, he's still someone who's going to get in front of the press. He's going to have that microphone in his face. He's going to be making comments. He's not shy about making comments about his clients, about his cases to the press. So R. Kelly Avenatti is going to be something that definitely the press is going to be looking at.
Right. I mean, and he had his own domestic violence charges against him. Those, ultimately, prosecutors did not pursue those. Well, it's certainly going to be an interesting one to watch, and I think we may see some big developments in the coming days for sure. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we'll have much more live from California in the McStay family murders trial. Stay with us. So, if anything, in my mind, that evidence, those the login log, if you will, almost raises more questions than anything, because there you have, in September of 2010, 7 months after the family goes missing, logins under Joseph McStay's name. I mean, certainly it is suspicious. Do you agree, Imran?
Yeah, it's suspicious, but again, it really doesn't get the prosecution that much closer to proving this case beyond a reasonable doubt that Charles Merritt murdered this family. I understand that the prosecution has to go through, put out the financial forensic evidence before this jury, because really, they don't have that much to link directly to Charles Merritt. So, they have to put all the circumstantial evidence before this jury and connect the dots and hope that it sticks.
Yeah, I mean, just wondering, so what could be the possibilities about someone logging in 7 months after, because the next logins don't come until 4 years after that, when detectives start to dig into the case, and the detective, who we just heard from a few minutes ago live on the stand, is given a login to go through the account. So in my mind, that really is pretty bizarre, and that's an extra layer here. But let's see, what more we hear about that. Let's now go to the redirect of Michael West on the stand.
Do you recognize that?
I do.
And is this check actually reflected on the activity log that you have as well?
Yes, it is.
And so this is a check that's created on February 1st of 2010, is that correct?
Yes.
And what time is that check deleted?
It is deleted at 12:47 p.m.
And that's reflected on your activity log?
Yes, and the activity log also shows the check number that was assigned to that check.
All right, we're going to break away from that to bring you back to the live testimony happening now. Detective Hanke back on the stand. He is with the San Bernardino Sheriff's Office. So we're hearing in this cross-examination the detective being questioned about, what logins were made under which name and when, why he thought this was all suspicious. And we heard the line of questioning just before the break, was Joseph McStay the only admin on this account? Yes. Did Dan Kavanaugh have access, administrative privileges? And he testified no. So, what does this do? I mean, that if anything, is helpful to the prosecution's case, right? If there's, well, Dan Kavanaugh didn't have access. On the other hand, like you and I said, it opens up, the possibility of even more scenarios. Did Dan Kavanaugh have Joseph McStay's login, as Charles Merritt apparently did?
Right. If you're the prosecution, and you're putting forward your case, as you put on evidence before the jury, you want to be bringing it towards the end zone, right? You want the evidence to sort of narrow down the possibilities of A, another suspect, B, a different, version of events of how the crime happened. You want the evidence to narrow it down for the jury towards the defendant on trial. Throughout this trial, Stacey, I think that the evidence is not necessarily doing that.
Right.
There's a lot
it's
of
not hammering home the points
exactly.
that they're trying to. I mean, I'm not even sure what points they're trying to hammer home half the time. So, yeah, I do agree with you on that for sure. So, again, if anything, in my mind, and perhaps in the jurors' minds too, all of this testimony just raises more questions about this account, the suspicious computer activity, the fact that, there were a number of checks changed and edited in the days after Joseph McStay goes missing. I mean, for sure, someone is taking part in some questionable activity at that time. Let's listen back in. It looks like testimony is resumed.
On the front page, next on the set is the phone number.
0102, yes, sir.
And then Mr. McStay's phone number ends in 7451.
I don't recall.
Exhibit 442.
Okay, looks like some sidebar stuff going on there, a little break. Well, I think what happened, right, was the prosecutor said she didn't have some of the evidence or some of the records that were put up, so maybe they're going back and forth over that at this point. But let's talk a little bit more about, the defense's theory, what they want the jury to think, that the other business associate killed them, that the other business associate was responsible, Dan Kavanaugh. I mean, I think certainly if the prosecution ever wraps up their case, which has been going on and on for weeks, it'll be really interesting to see how they lay that out. Do you think, that they will be able to prove that any more effectively than the prosecution has tried to prove Charles Merritt did it?
Right. Well, all they have to do is argue to the jury reasonable doubt.
Reasonable doubt,
right. They have to show
that. They don't have to prove, you're right. That Kavanaugh did it. But will they be able to, I guess, raise enough suspicion that maybe it wasn't Merritt and maybe Dan Kavanaugh is a potential suspect here?
Stacey, in this case, I think they may. Because you have to think about the evidence that's gone, before the jury in this trial. You have to think about how the time frame between the 2010, when the investigators were treating this as a missing persons case rather than the 2013 homicide case. There was critical evidence that may have been lost at that time. The prosecution is doing the best with what they have, but it also allows the defense to poke holes in their case and to raise this big question mark about Kavanaugh and, other versions of events of how this crime may have happened.
And what was something really interesting that came up last week, we're going to go back to court, but just briefly, was that it came up in a testimony from another detective that they got an anonymous tip stating that Dan Kavanaugh lured the family from the home and killed him, but then they never followed up on that tip. Big question mark there. Let's go back and listen live to the testimony. So some interesting back and forth between defense attorneys for Charles Merritt and this detective when they go through the phone records here. They are trying to prove that the phone records match up with the QuickBooks log. Well, at this time, this check was written and deleted, but look, the phone record shows that Merritt called McStay at this time. So they're trying to suggest, he was doing this at Joseph McStay's direction, essentially. I mean, that line, does this make it sound a little less suspicious now, is the point they're trying to hammer home. Do you think it was effective?
Excuse me. Yes, Stacey, I think that, the defense right now is on cross-examination of this detective. They're going through the pattern of how a call would be made, a check would be issued, deleted between Merritt and McStay, and they're trying to build up a argument, which I'm sure in summation they'll hit home, that this was a pattern or practice and it wasn't suspicious. So the prosecution is trying to use this forensic evidence to say, all right, look at this possibly nefarious purpose that Charles Merritt was involved in with the QuickBooks, etc. The defense now on cross-examination is trying to show innocent explanations for this activity and to show a pattern between McStay and Merritt that would do away with any sort of nefarious purpose that the prosecution may be trying to show here.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, certainly that's a possibility. You know, they raise that, okay, maybe, but ultimately, I mean, we have no idea what the nature of the phone calls were back and forth. They could have been like, okay, let's set up this meeting, let's cancel it. Are we going to do this deal or are we not going to do this deal? You know, did you lock up the office or not, right? I mean, no one knows what happened in those phone calls except Charles Merritt now.
Right. And, you know, again, that's another problem that the prosecution is going to have to shoulder because there's a lot of question marks. They have that tremendous burden to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. And listen, if I was the defense, if I was Charles Merritt's attorney, I would be saying, listen, at the end of this case, there's not enough to convict. The jury should acquit my client.
Well, you know, I'm sure that's what defense attorneys, of course, will do. The question is, will the jury buy it? Of course, in any case. We're going to take another quick break, but we'll be back with much more live from the McStay family murder trial. All right, so the cross-examination continues here with a bit of a pause. Imran, we were talking about the question of the IP addresses and all this. They don't have IP addresses. Maybe if they did, that would point us to who exactly was logging into the account and creating and deleting the checks.
Yeah, correct. I mean, you know, with forensic evidence, when it deals with computers, I think the IP address is a key forensic piece of evidence. You heard this detective was just cross-examined by the defense attorney whether he had the IP addresses for these logins, the IP address associated with these logins that he's being testifying to. And he said he didn't. He was asked if he asked QuickBooks if this information was available. Critically, he testified he didn't.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like one of the most obvious things. I mean, you perhaps might have some experience with computer forensics. I mean, you know, I have certainly reported on it and covered cases, but I mean, the average person, I think, would think, oh, the IP address right away. And so it seems unusual that the detective didn't think to ask for that, I think. Obviously, this will be another opening for the defense to prove that, to try to prove that law enforcement didn't cross every T and dot every I. I mean, I think throughout the case, they have been trying to highlight examples of that, including the one I was talking about briefly before, that they got a tip stating that the other business associate, Dan Kavanaugh, lured the family out of the home, killed them, buried them, drove the family vehicle to the border, which is exactly what happened. But, you know, a detective said they never identified the tipster and then admitted they didn't follow up with Kavanaugh either. So these are two big question marks about the investigation. I mean, just two of many. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. You know, throughout this trial, it's been somewhat painful as you get these pieces of testimony where we hear that the detective or law enforcement personnel failed to do something in regard to this investigation. You know, so the defense will likely hone in on this, and, you know, the jury's hearing this testimony, and you're hearing a lot of testimony, a lot of evidence in this case, but there's those missteps during the course of this investigation that really puts the prosecution at a disadvantage.
Yeah, you know, I tend to agree with you on that, and I think perhaps, you know, the jury may be picking up on that as well. I think the defense has done a somewhat effective job of certainly pointing out all of those instances. I mean, ultimately, a lot of it does fall on the investigation and the hard work that law enforcement did, or maybe not so hard work, back when the case was investigated, you know, some 5 years ago now. I mean, at this point, it's too late to go back and look for, you know, any evidence or, you know, chase down any leads that perhaps they didn't.
Right. And you know what? I think the fact that it was treated as a missing persons case from 2010 to 2013 may be a factor here. You know, those critical pieces of evidence are often, you know, found in the immediate time frame after someone is murdered in a homicide investigation. Treating it as a missing persons case before the homicide investigation, 3 years,
they were
that could
looking
be a
into it the same way they would have had they found the bodies immediately, for sure, and for sure a lot was altered, disappeared, whatever over the course of that time. I mean, look, the bodies were completely, you know, decomposed. Let's go back in line to court. So what you're seeing there highlighted on the screen is the last phone call made from Joseph McStay's phone to Charles Merritt's phone. It was at 5:49 p.m. on February 4th, 2010. But here's the strange thing the prosecutor was just bringing up. When we look at Charles Merritt's phone records, we see the last phone call from Joseph McStay to Charles Merritt was actually, I think she said, at 8:28 p.m. Hard to know what to make of that. What's your interpretation, Imran?
Right. I mean, it's bizarre because normally a phone record will match up because it's something which is hard and fast, records that are kept by the phone provider or carrier. So the fact that they're not matching up is somewhat bizarre. You have the prosecution pointing this out through this witness. But again, where it's ultimately going to end in terms of an argument or the evidence that they're trying to show here remains to be seen. The forensic evidence here is complicated. The jury is getting a lot. It's up to these attorneys, both the defense and the prosecution at the end of the day, to sort of explain it to the jury in summations.
Yeah, I mean, and given how long this trial is stretching on, I mean, we know that the jurors in California and this county are allowed to take notes. I imagine they have some very copious notes, and we'll have a lot to look back on with all of these different little pieces of data information, times, dates, logons, cancellations of accounts, etc. Let's go back in live now. Well, that was the end of a long afternoon, long day of testimony from Detective Dan Hankey of the San Bernardino Sheriff's Office, who went over and over various phone records, various login records, auditing records from QuickBooks. And I guess in the end, Imran, you and I are saying, well, bottom line is, phone records maybe don't tell the truth. I mean, I'm not sure what to make of that because you're seeing two different stories from two different people's phone logs. One says a call was placed at 8:48. The other says the last call was at 8:28, I think, and 5:48 or something. So, I mean, I guess as you pointed out, the defense is trying to say, hey, don't trust the records. Though on the other hand, weren't they also trying to say that these phone records make the QuickBook transactions look less suspicious?
Right. Well, you know what? That last piece of recross by the defense, I think the defense, again, scored some points. The prosecution is relying heavily on these phone records to, again, add to their ammo of evidence to show that Merritt had a hand in this murder, right? But what did we just see? We see phone records that don't match up. And listen, that detective testified he's not a cell phone expert. I'm not sure if the prosecution intends to call a cell phone expert, but right now the defense, I believe, scored more points because they just showed inconsistencies within two phone records.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I would imagine, given the length of this trial already and the fact that the prosecution case is supposed to continue, I wouldn't be surprised if we did hear from a cell phone expert in the coming days, as we've heard from all kinds of QuickBook experts, investigators, customer service representatives, and so on and so forth. Waiting to see now, I'm checking the monitor just to see whether or not we are going to have another witness or not, but we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back after this. Welcome back. Well, court has just adjourned for the day in California, wrapped up with that Detective Dan Hankey, who we heard from testifying about the QuickBook records in all of this, about the fact that there were all of these logins and creations of checks and deletions of checks after Joseph McStay was last heard from, certainly raising a lot of questions, which the defense, of course, tried to knock down. Court now is off on Fridays. As we know, court is always dark on Fridays in this case, and Monday's President's Day, so we won't be back until Tuesday. So yet again, another kind of long break in this case. And Imran, that's something I've noticed, and I know all of us here at Law&Crime have noticed, that this trial really does seem to be stretching on, and no one seems to be in a hurry. Because last week, they cut out early on Thursday. The judge had a dentist appointment. Then there's no court on Friday. There was a holiday on Monday. Let's just take off Tuesday, whatever it was. And so, you're having some days like a day and a half of testimony a week in this trial as we now stretch into, I think, the seventh week. What do you think that sort of does for jurors to kind of not have this continuity? Well, you're going to want to hope that these attorneys during jury selection prepared the jury for the likelihood of a long trial. Sure.
So, you know, a jury, they're taking time out of their day, their life to sit on this jury, right? And, you know, when a trial stretches out, you sometimes lose the jury, their interest in the case, but also, you know, you want to have the jury engaged, but you want them prepared for the inevitable long trial. So let's hope that during voir dire, during jury selection, they were told that they may be sitting for a while.
I think they were told for sure that this would be a long case, but I think there's a difference from saying, okay, this is going to be a 3-month, 4-month, 5-month, 6-month case, and then, you know, but there's just going to be 2 days of court here and 3 days of court here, because, you know, I do think, you know, that people might, you know, I sometimes can't remember what I ate for breakfast yesterday, let alone what was the exact testimony we heard from 4 days ago. But, you know, that's why they're taking notes, and, you know, it'll be interesting to see, I guess, what the questions are at the very end when they finally get the case, and how many of these sort of minute points they want to go back to. Well, we're going to move on now, and let's take a look at our true crime update for today.
This is today's True Crime Update from Law&Crime. InfoWars conspiracy theorist Alex Jones will have to submit to a sworn deposition as part of the defamation lawsuit filed against him by families of Sandy Hook victims. The ruling from Judge Barbara Bellis allows for Jones and 3 other defendants involved with the business operations of InfoWars to be deposed. Jones repeatedly has promoted conspiracy theories on his radio and internet shows that the Sandy Hook shooting was a hoax and that families of victims are so-called crisis actors. The lawsuit claims that Jones doesn't believe the theories, but is using them to build an audience and make money through advertising and products he sold on his website. Empire star Jussie Smollett is speaking out about his assault in Chicago. In an interview with Good Morning America, Smollett describes racial slurs invoking President Trump's campaign slogan hurled at him immediately before he was attacked.
And I see the attacker masked. And he said, "This MAGA country punches me right in the face."
Chicago police have released a surveillance picture of 2 persons of interest in the case, but so far, no arrests have been made. The wife of ex-Chicago cop Jason Van Dyke says that her husband was assaulted by inmates in his cell in federal prison. "We are all petrified and in fear for Jason's life," his wife Tiffany told the Chicago Sun-Times. Van Dyke was recently transferred to the federal prison in Danbury, Connecticut, from a local jail in Illinois. Van Dyke was sentenced to 6 years for second-degree murder and aggravated assault in connection with the death of unarmed teen Laquan McDonald. The Illinois Attorney General has appealed the sentence, claiming the judge misapplied the law and gave Van Dyke too lenient of a sentence. This is today's True Crime Update. I'm Jesse Weber for the Law&Crime Network.
Story we heard about, Alex Jones of InfoWars set to be deposed in this case. A number of Sandy Hook families suing him for defamation. As we know, he has been a long time critic of the Sandy Hook shooting, claiming that it's a hoax, that these parents are actors, and the families are now getting together to sue him. They also want to hear from employees of his company. No surprise that he's going to have to go a sworn deposition in this, right? I mean, we got to hear from him.
Right. And, you know, listen, the way that deposition plays out is going to be interesting because Alex Jones, listen, his content, what he comments about the Sandy Hook incident really gets a lot of people very, very upset. So now you have this lawsuit out there. The parents are going for damages against Alex Jones and InfoWars. He's going to have to sit for a deposition. Listen, a deposition, attorneys have a lot of free reign during a deposition to ask certain questions. So Alex Jones is really going to sit down. He's going to be subjected to this deposition. It's going to be interesting to see what he says and why he formulates the content that he puts out here on Sandy Hook.
I mean, he has denied the allegations and claimed First Amendment protections. Is that a strong enough argument, you think, in this case?
He could argue First Amendment, but that still doesn't prevent him from being deposed. So he's going to have to answer these questions, unless it's arguing Fifth Amendment, right? Which is the right to not self-incriminate yourself. Then for a deposition, First Amendment doesn't fly in terms of what he has to answer, unless he's invoking the Fifth.
Yeah, somewhat noteworthy that this order came yesterday, the day before today, which is the one-year anniversary of the Parkland shooting, of course, when 17 innocent people were killed. And some of the family members who are suing Jones in this case did put out some statements after the deposition, after it was announced he would have to give a sworn deposition. One of the fathers, Mark Barden, saying that for years Alex Jones and his co-conspirators have turned the unthinkable loss of our sweet little Daniel and so many others into advertising dollars and fundraising appeals. It's far beyond time that he be held accountable for the pain his false narratives have caused. So certainly will be interesting to see how this plays out, and a lot of people definitely have a lot of personal investment, I'm sure, in it. Well, let's move on to the other big legal story making headlines today, and that is R&B star R. Kelly. Apparently, there is new evidence that shows R. Kelly having sex with an underage girl. And where did this evidence come from? None other than Stormy Daniels' Trump enemy, Michael Avenatti. Apparently, he is representing a whistleblower of sorts in this case who had this tape that he claims clearly shows R. Kelly having sex with an underage girl, and Avenatti went and turned that tape over to the Chicago Cook County DA's office. Take a look at this update.
Baby, give me that, and let me give you that.
The R&B singer, who has long denied claims he slept with underage women while settling their lawsuits against him out of court, may soon be in deeper trouble with the law. Attorney Michael Avenatti claims to have a tape showing R&B superstar R. Kelly having sex with an underage girl. Also, the New Yorker is reporting that an indictment is pending and R. Kelly could soon be arrested. That report cites unnamed law enforcement sources in Chicago. The author of the report has reported on R. Kelly for 17 years. Avenatti says he's representing a whistleblower who claims to have worked for R. Kelly for decades. The whistleblower contacted Avenatti, and Avenatti turned over the alleged sex tape he provided to prosecutors in Chicago. CNN says it viewed the tape, which is 45 minutes long, and calls it clear and explicit. CNN could not independently verify the girl's age, but in the video, the girl refers to herself as 14. R. Kelly was arrested for child pornography in 2002, but was acquitted in 2008. He has spent millions settling civil suits from women claiming he had sex with them while they were underage, while himself denying he did anything wrong.
So interesting new stuff in a case that a lot of people have been following very closely, particularly because of that docuseries that I think broke records for Lifetime in terms of viewership when all of these women came forward saying they were victims of R. Kelly's sex cult, they were underage at the time, so on and so forth. So Imran, right now the state's attorney's office is not confirming or denying the New Yorker report that an indictment is imminent, but what's your take? Do you believe that indeed it is?
So I wouldn't be surprised if an indictment will be coming down the pipeline for R. Kelly. This is his second time where we have a videotape with R. Kelly and an alleged underage girl. You have the docuseries that you just talked about, and you have Avenatti in the picture. So there's a lot of press on this, and when there's a lot of press on a case, on an investigation, usually a prosecutor's office will pay attention because they're going to be ultimately also under the microscope of what they're going to do. So I wouldn't be surprised if an indictment is forthcoming in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I guess Avenatti's kind of like Gloria Allred. Whenever a high-profile celebrity case, certainly a sex case comes up, they get on it right away. And yes, he's very high profile and certainly I think elevated the profile of this case even more. I know there were perhaps also investigations going on in Atlanta, but unclear what is going on with that. I guess, one other question I have is what do investigators do to verify the age of the girl? I mean, perhaps the girl is around and wants to participate, but what if she does not want to?
Right. So let's just assume that the prosecutor's office, they have this videotape. They're going to be looking into the people surrounding the videotape. They're going to be looking to speak to this girl, the source of the videotape, and remember, subpoena power. they will have subpoena power that if they need to bring someone in for this investigation in front of that grand jury, they could do that with a subpoena.
Yep, that's a good point. Well, listen, we'll certainly be keeping an eye on that case. Remember, McStay family murder case, Charles Merritt death penalty case will be back live on Tuesday. Imran, I want to thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. You provided some great insight on not just the Charles Merritt death penalty case, but also these big news of the day cases. So thank you again. And thank you to our viewers today for being with us. Remember, a quick programming note for you. We are not done, because coming up next, Brian Ross investigates, a hard look at the investigations into the Sackler family. That's the family that owns the company which makes OxyContin, a number of opioids. Coming up live right after this.